All right, y'all, we're live. I noticed I just scheduled the stream for 10:10 tomorrow morning. That's not what I meant to do. So it's actually live now. We're live on Atlanta Falcons on SI, and we're going to bring in X as well. And we are going to get going as a, rather uneventful football Saturdays going on. And we're good to go. Welcome in, y'all. It is the Falcons Podcast, the gut reaction on Saturday night, 10/12, January 17th. The Falcons did not F around, but they still found out. They went out and got Kevin Stefanski, former two-time NFL Coach of the Year at 43 years old with the Cleveland Browns, as their next head coach. Early reports say that Tommy Rees could be his offensive coordinator, but we'll see how that goes. He is an offensive guy. He coached tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks for a long time in Minnesota and was an offensive coordinator there for 1 year, and then he ran the offense with the Cleveland Browns as well. My gut reaction on this is, it's hard to say I have a gut reaction because we feel like this has been coming, but I feel like I've been having to fight people off on this one. They're like, Kevin Stefanski, that guy, that doesn't make any sense. That just makes perfect sense. A two-time Coach of the Year at 43 years old. This is the best credentialed candidate the Falcons have had since Dan Reeves. Oh, he failed in Cleveland. Who doesn't fail in Cleveland? I just went upstairs and told my wife, grab some water because I'm going to be talking a whole lot. I said, I'm going to be up for a little bit because the Falcons just announced their hire, so I'm going to podcast, and then I get all wound up, and I can't sleep anyway. It's like, who'd they get? I said, well, Kevin Stefanski. He was just fired from the Cleveland Browns. 43-year-old two-time Coach of the Year. I said, they already got him? I said, yeah. I said, people are kind of out of their minds on this because, he was fired by the Cleveland Browns. And she yells across the room, she goes, it's the Browns. Exactly. Who doesn't get fired from the Browns? The second winningest coach Cleveland has had in 40 years, behind Bill Belichick. And if he had gone after last year, he would have been ahead of Belichick. These last 2 years really tanked him as the Deshaun Watson fiasco finally started to pay the toll on that one. Let me move this chair. It's kind of distracting me a little bit with that mesh going. And people forget, it's not like he failed in Pittsburgh, where they've only had three coaches, or the Packers. This is the Browns. This is one of the worst organizations in the world, and he won there. I was looking, I think they've had 3 double-digit winning seasons in the last 30 years, and he has 2 of them. Cleveland Browns ref. Let me see if I can find the whole thing. Cleveland Browns ref. But he's just a couple of percentage points off Bill Belichick's record from when they had him. But he had 11 wins in 2023 and 11 wins in 2020. 8 wins and 7 wins, and then it fell off as the $250 million of guaranteed money. Picture having Kirk Cousins on the roster another 3 years with him not playing, and what that might do. Oh, and not having any first-round draft picks for a long time. 2007, Romeo Crennel won 10 games, and the last time before that, it was actually Belichick in 1994 was the last time that anybody won 11 games. So it's in the last 32 years. I always say once you hit 40-something, you lose a decade. You're like, oh, 1994, that was 20 years ago. No, it wasn't, brother. That was 30 years ago. They've had 3 10-win seasons, a 10 and 2 11s. He had the 2 11s. This guy has the best credentials, like I said, that the Falcons have had of anybody since Dan Reeves, who had taken the Broncos to a bunch of Super Bowls, but got himself fired from a bunch of jobs because he thought he was a general manager too, and he wasn't. May he rest in peace. Let me see what you guys have to say about some of this, because you're coming in already. And Trenton is coming in, a member, dear member. He says, let's fly. New slogan. Love it, Scott, and love you. Love you too, brother. Hope you're doing well tonight. We're going to get a little fired up tonight. I had said Kubiak was my top guy of, because you always look at who could be there. You look at offensive coordinators who are doing well. Those are always top guys. And you look at assistants, maybe a former head coach. I never thought that John Harbaugh would be available. And I wasn't thinking of Kevin Stefanski. As soon as that happened, and then Matt LaFleur, once his name started going around a little bit, my top choices were John Harbaugh, Matt LaFleur, and Kevin Stefanski, maybe in that order. But I'm pretty dang happy with this hire, Trenton. D-Free, hope you were doing well. He says, thank God they went for an offensive guy. Yeah, and again, I've said your past experience is what helps shape your worldview. That's called bias. Everybody's biased. Watching Matt Ryan go through a new offensive coordinator every other year because he had success biased how I look at this. Watching Todd Bowles sitting at home watching the playoffs while his two offensive coordinators former offensive coordinators from the last 2 seasons are in the playoffs shapes how I viewed this. That's why I always wanted an offensive guy. Now, if the right guy wasn't there, I don't want to just say, oh, we'll go get Nathaniel Hackett. You can miss on all of them. I mean, the odds of hitting on a first-time head coach is slim. And frankly, y'all, the odds of hitting on your head coach, period, aren't good. I mean, let's be realistic about this. Anybody that has coached, I don't know how many, the guy who must not be named coached before he quit, Bobby Petrino. Other than that, the Falcons have fired every coach they've ever had. So if you're going to say I told you so in 5 or 6 years that this was going to blow up and be terrible, go ahead. But they fired every coach they had. Coaches are hired to be fired. There's a pretty good chance he's not going to be around in 6 or 7 years. But if he is, wow, that would be absolutely amazing. He's only 43 years old. He could be, a long-term guy with the Atlanta Falcons. Early reports, Tommy Rees are going to be his offensive coordinator, and that he wants to keep Jeff Ulbrich as his defensive coordinator, keep some sort of semblance here. And now you've got an offensive guy here that has, again, he's got the best resume the Falcons have hired since they, Garrett just said, are we doing a reaction tomorrow? I was like, brother, I'm doing one now. Just text me. Since Dan Reeves. So I'm pretty excited about this. Abel7536, new member. Thank you for being a member, brother, for coming in like that. Helps support the show, helps keep us doing what we do, and we end up doing more because of it. So thank you for supporting the show. And Curtis says, glad they went with an offensive head coach that has experience. Depending on where you'd believe or not, it says Matt Ryan, valued having an experienced head coach, which means you're going to have someone that has been fired. And again, is Kubiak, is he going to be, I think Kubiak's going to be head coach. I'll be shocked if he isn't. Could he be the next Ben Johnson? Maybe. Could he be the next D'Amico Ryans? Maybe. Could he be the next Nathaniel Hackett? Probably not. I mean, that's pretty rare also. But odds are, he's not going to succeed either. And a lot of it has to do with where the situation you end up. If you listen to Dan Orlovsky, he says the best situation right now if you take, let's say, the Ravens and Steelers out of it, even including those two, the team that's set up to win now, the best one, and I don't want to say win now, but it's the Falcons. I was looking at one of those EPA or DVOA charts between offense, defense, and how they stacked up. The Falcons were 11th in the NFL. They're the only team in the top 14 that didn't make the playoffs. We know the slim margins this team blew, that if they just had average special teams, they might be playing today in some of the most exciting football games that we've seen. Poor San Francisco. They just way overachieved to get to where they are, and they're getting their butts kicked. But everything else it's been amazing. Won't that be fun again? That's what I'm looking forward to, and I want it for y'all. Jet Jones, good to see you too. Says, who do you think his staff will be? Most importantly, on the defensive side of the ball, it looks like they want to try and keep Ulbrich. Ulbrich isn't, the second coming of Buddy Ryan or whoever. Who's the best? Vic Fangio. I don't even think Vic Fangio is that great. I think he's got great personnel and plays safe underneath. That Ulbrich, I think, is a good defensive coordinator. I liked what he did, and I'd like to get him some help. I'd like to get him another big body in the middle. I'd like to get him a couple more defensive backs. I'd like him to have some more depth at linebacker. And I want to see those young guys keep developing. There's a great young core there between Dorless and Walker and Pierce and Watts. That's a terrific young core. And I'm hoping it's going to be him. And then, one of the other holdovers I'd like to see is Dwayne Ledford, offensive line coach. I think he has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. I mean, yes, Eli Wilkinson jumped off sides, false start way too often, but he's a second team left guard, third team right tackle, played 17 games this year and was adequate. That's amazing to me. Amazing. So I think Ledford has been just spectacular with the Atlanta Falcons. Starting, I'm guessing that Arthur Smith hired him, but the leap that team made in the trenches from the year 2021 to 2022 was big, and Ledford was a big part of that. So thank you, Arthur Smith, for that. Walter Beach is coming in too, and he's just got. I'll look and see if you have something to say. Sometimes people hit like the super chat button without actually putting their text in first. So I want to make sure you don't get shortchanged on that. Otherwise, just thank you for supporting the show on this. It really means a lot. Let me text Garrett back real quick. I'm on now if you want to join. And now I'm going to turn that off. If Garrett wants to come in, he's welcome to come and join us. Let's say hello to some folks. I'm sure there's going to be some naysayers. There's always going to be. But before I get to and start going through the comments, here's the only thing I ask. It's such a binary world. It's like, I feel like the old Mike Myers skit, if it's not Skull, it's just crap. If it's not my guy, then everything else is awful. There is no perfect candidate. They don't exist. There's no perfect candidate out there. Yes, all of these guys, if you hire anybody with experience, they've been fired. That's just the way it is. And, to fail in Cleveland, oh no. You're expected to fail in Cleveland. That's like saying, well, man, I wouldn't want Dan Marino. He couldn't even win a Super Bowl. Calvin Johnson's pretty mid. He couldn't even get to a Super Bowl. Barry Sanders, forget it. That guy couldn't get to a Super Bowl either. What would I want with that loser? And I'm not saying this is a Hall of Fame coach, but his credentials are pretty damn good. I looked it up today as part of the talking points. They've been doing NFL Coach of the Year since like 1957. So we're going on, what is that, 100 years now? Am I 100 years old yet? What's that now? 43, 26, we'll call it 70 years. There's been 13 coaches that have won it twice. Kevin Stefanski is one of those coaches. That's pretty damn impressive. The Browns in their history have had 3 NFL Coaches of the Year. Stefanski is 2 of them. The Falcons have had 2 NFL Coaches of the Year. Dan Reeves, who I mentioned earlier, and Mike Smith. Mike Smith won it in 2008 as well. We want to talk about coming off the top rope. Here he is, Maurice Bonney. He's coming in. We're going to start calling you Superfly. Maurice Superfly Bonney. Coming off the top rope with a bright red, Falcons red. I got my Chelsea blue on today. They played earlier, and they won today too. What a day we're having. Maurice, who's a member also. Do you think he can develop our young QB, and do you think there's anything there with his connection to Cousins? Great question, because when he was the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator, and actually as some time as assistant coach, he did coach Cousins in Minnesota. If Cousins were or is to come back, it will be after he is released, and then they re-sign him to a bridge deal, and he would do that eyes wide open. You're not. If he comes back, hey, we're going to make you the starter, and we're not going to do anything. No, eyes wide open. Cousins is in the shame on me phase of this relationship with the Atlanta Falcons. If Stefanski wants Cousins and Cousins wants to come back and he wants to do it for $10 million, so be it. What are your other options out there? Zach Wilson. We're about to get a real good look at what horrible news. I don't know how many of y'all saw this already. I'm sure if you're on here, you're dual scrolling or whatnot. But Bo Nix breaks his ankle in the second to last play in overtime. He's not going to play the rest of the season. Hopefully, it's 2 more games for the Denver Broncos for them. Jarrett Stidham is a free agent after this year, I believe. If he can win, if he can pull a Nick Foles and win a couple games, he's going to get a bunch of money. Malik Willis is going to be in the $25 million range. That's too much. Can you pull off a trade for Mac Jones or, let's say, Davis Mills in Houston? You want one of those mid-tier guys, not the $50 million guys, maybe not even a $30 million guy, but a $15 million guy. That might be Cousins. Hell, he's already going to count $35 million against the cap. You might as well get a little play from him too. But he will be cut first, and then he would be re-signed. He'd be re-signed to a 1-year deal worth X amount of money with knowing that if and when Penix comes in, he's probably going to be the starter. And if Cousins has better options than that, he might choose him, and he just might want to get out of Atlanta. My last chance, I want to go somewhere else. Could be the options on this. Do I think this is one of the things I've seen? He can't develop a quarterback in Cleveland. I mean, I feel like that's some of the Shedeur Sanders stuff just rubbing off on him. When has he had a chance to develop a quarterback? Honestly, he comes in, Baker Mayfield played pretty well for him. And just like Baker Mayfield was a bust in Cleveland. No, he's not. That's really more Cleveland than it was Baker Mayfield. He had a lot of success. He's one of the most successful quarterbacks that they've had in 40 years. It's Brian Sipe, for goodness sakes. Bernie Kosar, old guys. Baker could play. So then you go in and you spend how many, was it 3 first-round draft picks and $50 million a year on Deshaun Watson, who was damaged goods. Once all this stuff comes out, and hell, even Watson had a 5-1 record at one point. Now it's a string of Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett. And you drafted 2 guys or 3 guys. Every single one of the guys that the Browns have drafted under Stefanski at quarterback were taken after Desmond Ridder. They were like 90, 120, and 144. Desmond Ridder was drafted in the 60s, I think, in the 3rd round, or early 70s in the 3rd round. You got a 3rd and 2 fifths. That's not development of quarterbacks. And 2 of those 3 guys were taken 9 months ago. You haven't even had your baby if you got pregnant when those guys were drafted. How do you know he can't develop a quarterback? That's just, I don't know that he can or can't, but I'm certainly not going to definitively say he cannot. That's ignorant. That's an agenda. I don't know for sure that he's got a track if he can. I know he's going to get a chance. We're going to get a chance to find out, because if it's not Penix, the Falcons are going all in on a quarterback in 2027. They'll be back in the draft for a quarterback in 2027. So we will find out who's going to be quarterback next year. Michael Penix, if he's healthy. I stand by that. They've got to find out. They put a number 8 into him. This regime didn't. This regime did not. They did not draft him. They did not sign Cousins to a huge contract and then draft a quarterback, which ended up getting people fired. But we've seen enough from Penix, and you don't have a first-round draft pick, and you're not going to get somebody in free agency that would demand the type of money that demands they start. So I think it's going to be Penix and a bridge. And, maybe that bridge turns into Daniel Jones, who was flying before he got hurt with Shane Steichen. Maybe that bridge turns into Geno Smith, who had a rebirth in Seattle. Maybe he turns into Sam Darnold, who's up 27-6 in Seattle. Something to that Seattle thing. Hasn't always been Kubiak, though, so I know that this was his first year there. So he hadn't have anything to do with Geno, for y'all out there. Second and short, Falcons report says, by him taking the job, can we assume he likes Penix? Also, does he call the plays or just installs the scheme? He's done both. I know he handed off play calling duties at one point in his 6-year career, but he's also called plays doing it in Cleveland. And I'll get back to the first part of this. By him taking the job, can we assume he likes Penix? No, absolutely not. He may like Penix, but he's not nobody is taking this job because, oh man, I can't wait to work with Michael Penix. I got to go to that job instead of, I chose Michael Penix over Cam Ward. No, absolutely not. I chose Arthur Blank. I chose the city of Atlanta. I chose Matt Ryan. I chose Falcons fans. I chose Bijan Robinson. About that, you have to look. I need to look for 5 or 6 years down the road. And I like what the Falcons sold me. I want to keep Jeff Ulbrich. He's already there. I want to have the money to go out and spend, that I know my ownership will go out and spend money on free agents and try and retain the guys that I want to. And I want to have some input in all of that. And I like the franchise. This is a good job. As bad as they've messed it up through the years. I mean, we're going through this. We went through it last week about where's the Falcons' job? And they had the Browns. God, they had the Browns ahead of the Falcons for one, but they were like 4th. I'm like, how on earth are the Browns ahead of of Atlanta for one. I mean, it's not, if they're not the worst job, that's still probably the Raiders for me. But I'm not a huge fan of what the Titans have been doing lately. The Arizona Cardinals, I saw a stat the other day that says the Arizona Cardinals, who have been around since 1920s, have as many playoff wins as, who was it, Houston Texans. The Cardinals, they're not a great job either. And I know what I'm saying when you're saying it with the Falcons. It took them 40 years to have back-to-back winning seasons. They're one of the losingest franchises of all time. But they're still in a hotbed for football. They're still in a big media market. They still have one of the 10 richest owners in the NFL. They still have one of the best stadiums in the NFL. They still have one of the best cities and states in the world to live in around here. He didn't choose this job for Michael Penix. Now, he may say all the great things. I can't wait to work with him and do this. He chose it for everything else. Penix will get his shot. And if it doesn't work out, this is his last shot, where he doesn't face some big time competition. He's under contract for at least 2 more years. Then you see about his 5th-year option. So he's not going anywhere, unless someone comes in and offers him some huge trade or something. But he's not going anywhere. He's got a guaranteed contract that isn't all that expensive. But no, this doesn't really have anything to do with Michael Penix, in my opinion. Other than the fact that, hey, yeah, can I move on from Penix if if I need to? Do I have if I come and take the job, are you going to make me start Michael Penix? No, it's your roster. So that's my thoughts on it. That's how I believe it is. What is this? DNV TTV says, I think he can develop Penix, and I actually like him for Pitts. Look what Kevin did with Njoku and Fannin Jr. Plus, he can get our special teams somewhat better. Well, the good news is it would be nearly impossible to be worse on special teams. Your bar is set so low that your special teams are going to improve. Kind of like the pass rush when the Falcons had what? Was it 19 sacks in 2021 or whatever it was? It's like it was statistically almost impossibly bad. It had to get better. It couldn't get worse. Falcons coverage units really can't get any worse, and their return units really can't get any worse. Those will get better. That's a promise. Kyle Pitts is a pending free agent. We know this. I would franchise tag him in a heartbeat. I think they have until March 3rd. God, it's coming quick. It's about 6 weeks. March 3rd before they have to make that decision. Now, Kyle Pitts may balk at saying, I don't want to play under the franchise tag. Okay, fine. Are you going to hold out? I've at least have some leverage. And on top of that, I have a valuable asset. Remember a year ago, we're talking, hey, what people are saying, oh, so they should trade for Kyle Pitts. We'll send them we'll offer Falcons $5 million in a 7th. No, I'm not trading Kyle Pitts for that. That's stupid. He's only got 1 year left on his contract. Yeah, but he's got a franchise tag that's only 15.8, and he's worth that potential that we've seen from him is worth an $11 million roll of the dice. Well, Terry Fontenot rolled the dice, and he won. He won on Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is now a valuable asset that if they franchise tag him for 15.8, he can either play on 15.8 for one season and then go to free agency. You can tag him again, but then it'd be like 25 and a second tag. Or you take that time, you negotiate a longer contract, or you tag and trade. He'd be at least worth a 2nd-round pick at this point, whereas you were giving him away, and you probably had to pay some of that contract last year. But I would think that Kyle Pitts would be pretty damn excited of working with in a Kevin Stefanski offense as well. That is a great shout, DNB, so certainly appreciate it. I've hit y'all are killing it with the supers, and I take care of y'all first. I mean, I'm not stupid. That's stupid. So I do want to say hello to some folks that have came in early. B-side, he's not for it. He says, I'd rather have Raheem than this nonsense. And I really think, it's the especially the last year, when they've got Deshaun Watson, they bring in Joe Flacco and Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, and the whole thing's just a circus. I really think that is, and I don't mean this negatively because I say it all the time. I've said it already today, bias. I think that has biased some people's view of what's going on in Cleveland. Cleveland's a circus. It is absolutely. That's the way it's been for years. They've been one of the worst franchises since the 80s. So I just, again, two-time coach of the year. He's 43 years old, has 2 11-win seasons. They don't have anybody else that has done that since Marty Schottenheimer in the 1980s. And Maurice says, I hate it. I actually hate the hire. I hope I'm wrong. Well, yeah, we all do. And again, if you're going to bet, I kind of say, like, with recruiting and prospects, if you're going to bet on the negative. Odds are they're going to fail. Were 10 coaches hired in 2022 and 8 of them have already been fired? So that's the odds. Every coach the Falcons have hired that has coached at least 10 games, they fired. But this is the best resume we've seen since Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves' problem wasn't that he was a coach. Dan Reeves' problem is that he thought he was a GM and he ran a poor roster. Bryce is wrong, says hopefully a third coach of the year update in 2026. Falcon gang says, I'm on the fence. I hope the Browns ownership made him look worse than he was. And again, when was that trade? I know it's easy to remember when that trade was, because that's when the Falcons went after Deshaun Watson and they ended up having to trade Matt Ryan. So it was just prior to the 2022 season. So 22, 23, 24, 25, 25. That's 4 years of Deshaun Watson, of $50 million a year coming off your salary cap, which is about 20%. And how many picks? 5 or 6 high draft picks. Well, that doesn't really affect your team in years 1 and 2. That affects your team years 3, 4, and 5. We talk about impact rookies. The Falcons getting what they did from Xavier Watts and James Pierce Jr. is kind of an anomaly. You might have one impact rookie a season, but it's usually, especially in the trenches, 2-3 years down the line. Oh, and by the way, the guy that you traded for, made all those trades for, couldn't play anymore for one reason or another. Like I said, the NFL kind of, I'm not going to say the NFL broke him because he brought it all on himself. But ECU says, what about Tommy Rees as being the front runner for OC? I scouted Tommy in high school. It's crazy to me. So I don't know that much about him. I know I've seen him bounce around a little bit, and I've seen him go in the college ranks. I don't know too much about Tommy Rees, but it will be Kevin Stefanski's offense. Curtis, good to see you. So the Browns' last playoff game was 2023. The Falcons in 2017. Folks need to get over themselves. Everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe not everyone, and I get it. I said, one of the first comments on the post that I posted on this was, he was fired by the Browns, for goodness sake. Who succeeds in Cleveland? Who? Nobody succeeds in Cleveland. That he was fired in Cleveland. He had success in Cleveland. Then they effed it up. So it was, again, I think of the Detroit Lions, and, I could make the argument they've had 3 of the greatest players all time at their individual positions. I've always been a huge Matt Stafford fan. I watched him in high school and went out to Texas and watched him in high school. And I just think he's really just got a special arm. Always loved him. So, no, he's not the greatest of all time, but he didn't get the recognition he deserved until he got out of Detroit. Calvin Johnson, same way. Barry Sanders, the same way. Their greatness was despite the Detroit Lions' futility. Now, Kevin Stefanski might not be the second coming of Bill Parcells, but the success that he's had there is unprecedented. So I think the man can coach. Again, there's only been 13, and where are we at? In 70 years, there's been 13 guys win it twice or more, NFL Coach of the Year, and he's one of those guys. I think this is an excellent hire. The one that concerns me, I'm like, cynical of me, I'm like, they're going to end up with the Jeff Hafley guy who we just watched choke away a big lead to the Chicago Bears. Why? He is that, to me, he's the worst of the candidates, which means he'll probably end up being the next Bill Belichick. Rusty, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you being a member. He says, Scott, I'm happy. We needed that head coach play caller combo, and Ulbrich will still be the DC. New president of football, new GM, new head coach, new jerseys. I really like this move. It's a new age. I don't want to be on here in 10 months and lamenting same old Falcons because we see them doing some of the same old things. Hopefully this is some sort of exorcism. Let's channel some of the Saints voodoo down in New Orleans and bring in sacrifice some live chickens or something, whatever you got to do. But it is, and credit Arthur Blank again, recognizing, the first step in recovery is recognizing that there is a problem. There is a problem with the Atlanta Falcons. Their culture was broken. Too many people were comfortable. Oh God. I actually did a control F. I told you all this last year after last season at Terry Fontenot's end of year press conference. I did a control F and typed in comfortable on the notes, and comfortable was in there like 9 times. I'm like, that's a 4-letter word to me. I don't want to hear comfortable anymore. You guys should be very uncomfortable about what has happened with this team. I want competition. And I think it improved this year, but I think it ended up being too little too late. And, keeping your special teams coach may have cost a lot of people their jobs this year, honestly. If they have even adequate special teams, they win one more game, they're in the playoffs, and who knows? We've seen that this team, what they're capable of doing when they're playing well, they're capable of beating anybody. Get a banged up LA Rams, a banged up LA Rams or 49ers team in the first round. You could have beaten them. And moved on. Let's see here. Second short Falcon report coming back in again. He says, think about what he did with Nick Chubb. Now imagine Bijan. We don't have to imagine Bijan. We've seen it. And again, I don't want to see. I want to see more total touches. Running backs. I want to see better efficiency. NFL running back touch leaders. I want to see better efficiency. He was third. He had 366 total touches this year, which is, just a shade over. It's like 22 touches a game. I'd like to see better efficiency. And we saw some of that this year, but it seemed like as the Falcons got more and more desperate, the less we saw of Tyler Algier and the more we'd see Bijan. Which, if I'm desperate, it makes perfect sense. But once the season was lost, I was ready to but as fun as he is to watch, I was ready to put him in bubble wrap. I want him to be hitting his stride as he's going into his second contract, not losing, because he's not a power back. He's strong, but he's not a power back. And if he loses some of that twitch, he loses some of what makes him special. And the quick twitch is the first to go when you start getting wear and tear on that. So, I want to see Bijan in more space. I've said it a zillion times. And that happens by pushing the ball downfield, more play action. Why you hire a guy from a Sean McVay tree who runs more play action than anybody else in the NFL, and you end up running the least play action in the NFL. I mean, that's the Falcons that we've known and loved for our whole lives, isn't it? On that, coming back to Chevy's not happy about it. Appreciate you being a member, Chevy. This is just great. Another 10 years of 8 and 9. Yes, sometimes you just, it's better to just get a couple really bad years on the sitting around there drafting at 15 every year. 8 and 9, knowing you're a game out of the playoffs, but you're really not any good. It's terrible. Walter could have been a lot worse. That's the old spirit. It could have been worse. I know what you're saying, though, Walter, and I appreciate the super earlier. My Swanker says, I think it's a great choice. He gets to try and do better for the Falcons and the Browns. I mean, that's upgrading. As far as I'm concerned, the Browns are a blue blood franchise, but they've pissed away a lot of what made them a great franchise the first half of NFL history. Because the last half of NFL history, they've been one of the worst franchises. I know Cleveland, they'll blame Art Modell for that. If you say Art Modell up in Cleveland, you're going to get cussed at. James says it's a dynamite move. Scott Booth, appreciate you being a member, my friend. Says, I'm glad we got a head coach with experience. We've been looking for an adult in the room. Here's a good question from William. William says, who do you think Matt will get at GM? So there's he's a director. What's his name? Josh. Is it Josh Williams? Director of player personnel and scouting with the San Francisco 49ers, has been heavily linked, along with Ian Cunningham of the Chicago Bears. I think it's one of those two guys, and frankly, I think it's already done. And people say, well, God, I read these comments on Twitter, and it puts me in such a bad mood. The old phrase, it's kind of a math joke. Think how stupid the average person is. Now remember, the average person. Now remember, half the people are dumber than that. Well, I think they're all in the comment sections on X. Well, isn't it weird that the GM doesn't have any say in who the head coach is going to be? Only if you think the Falcons haven't been talking to the general manager for the past 2 weeks and probably the past 5 months. These relationships, this isn't like speed dating. They know these people. You can pick up the phone. You can answer a text. I can talk to their agent. I can do all those things. I promise you, if they don't already know, they've got it down to 2. But my guess is he's better. They've already got that done. Let's see. Corey B. Carter, he says, what have we actually changed other than adding Matt Ryan to the collaboration? Put me on the record for hating this. We were literally just repeated. And I think this comes down to, it was a loser. You hire another losing coach. You just hired another losing coach. Sometimes guys need a change of scenery, and being in Cleveland, you need a change of scenery. So, who does Cleveland get? Speaking of bad jobs, how are they the 4th best available job with, who was it? It was the Giants, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Browns. I'm like, holy AFC North bias. Good God. I think I can draw a 50-mile circle around those 4 teams. What have we changed? You've added a 2-time NFL head coach of the year to the staff, who's got the skins. He's got the plaque on the wall that says he's done this, who is an offensive coach and can take over an offense, run the offense, call the plays for the offense. Falcons didn't have that. What they had instead was a first-time offensive coordinator who had never called plays at the NFL and tried to learn on the fly. And you've got Rich McKay out of the room. I would consider that to be a pretty good positive as well. You're going to have a new special teams coach. I would consider that a positive as well. So I think you're going to have a new general manager to come in who might actually trade down to get more players instead of less. So you've got all those things because, again, when people talk about, Terry Fontenot in the draft, I think it improved. He was getting better, and I think he'll find another job before too long. Won't last too long. Before he has another job as well. Sorry, I'm getting a text message as we go live. I didn't want to totally turn everything off because it's kind of an important night if someone needs to reach me for something for business-wise. There's been a lot of changes in here, but Terry would trade 2 for 1, and then you've got no depth, and then you're having to spend free agency money instead of rookie contracts for a lot of your depth, and you're broke. This is what I've said. It's like let's not forget, 2026 was supposed to be the year. They built this team for 2025 and 2026. Okay, now after 2024, Kirk Cousins in 2025 was supposed to be the year. You're going to make your 2-year run. You gave Cousins a 2-year contract. Going to make a 2-year run with Kirk Cousins, and you're maxed out on salary cap with your free agencies going into 2025 because you could only spend $7 million on Diablo. You spent a ton of money on Cousins. You spent a ton of money on you had Bates locked up. You spent a ton of money on Darnell Mooney. You were broke going into 2025. You made your run. That was him shooting his shot and then trading away a first-round draft pick to bring in another first-round draft pick for 2025. He took a shot and ended up losing again. So there's going to be a different vision on how this team is built. And if you remember right, Corey, what was one of the biggest surprises that Arthur Blank said he had from the consulting group? That there was a clear lack of vision for this team. Yeah, it's because you can't try and win now and build for the future at the same time. What are we doing? Are we trying to win now, or are we trying to build for the future? I don't know, because you can build for the future while winning if you're already winning. If I'm the Green Bay Packers and I'm 12-4 and I'm drafting 26th and I take a quarterback, that's looking towards the future, but I'm already 12-4. I'm 13-3. I'm not coming off 6 straight losing seasons doing that. I'm not already winning. I don't have enough to win now, to improve my team from a loser to a winner while drafting players that aren't going to play. I can't do that. It's a lack of vision. So, Corey, what do we change? We changed the number one voice in Arthur Blank's ear from Rich McKay to Matt Ryan. We went from a head coach who doesn't call plays on offense or defense. We are getting rid of the special teams coordinator that had the worst unit in the NFL by some distance. We're getting a head coach that has 2-time NFL Coach of the Year award. So hopefully he can at least manage a game and use his timeouts correctly. A lot's changed. And new uniforms. If nothing else, the looks will change. I've seen people really talk a lot about the Falcons logo. Honestly, didn't notice they changed it that much. It wasn't a drastic change. Like, oh, let's go back to the old logo. I'm like, it's really not that much different. Speaking of changes on there, of course, I can't tell you what color the walls are in my bedroom. I really don't know. I'm like, light blue, beige. I'm not sure. Doesn't really matter. Didn't pay attention to that. So, Corey, hopefully a lot has changed, and hopefully that means a lot changes, because this team needed some change. Help Madness 90. He says, on to 2026. It's crash out season to be continued. Well, if you crash out, you're drafting top 5 in 2027, you're looking for a quarterback. Unless they do something like trade up again and trade away a 2027 to get back into the 2026 first round. At least if you lose, you'll be setting up for a big draft to get your quarterback in 2027. We'll see. We'll see what free agency, if they could, one of the ways they could, and you could turn this into a mini rebuild, if you let some of these free agents walk and don't immediately sign replacements. If you are fairly passive in free agency, and Caden Ellis walks, Tyler Algier, maybe Lorenzo Carter, maybe David Onyemata. Kyle Pitts. You could play the comp pick game and get 4 or 5 comp picks for those guys. Late day 2, probably not day 2, but early day 3, late day 3, maybe get 5 more picks and go into 2027 with 5 extra draft picks and a F ton of money in 2027 to make another run at it. I wouldn't recommend that, but it could happen. That would be a really crazy way of doing things, knowing that as a new coach, as a new general manager, I've got a little leeway. I don't think the impetus to win now will be quite as strong as it was when Raheem Morris came in and got Kirk Cousins and spent all that money with a roster that had just spent a ton of money in 2023 on Bates, on Yamada, Ellis, all those guys, and failed miserably with Ritter. I don't think it'll be quite as win now or else. So I wasn't surprised. I think they'll have a little bit more runway on this. Master Roshi, appreciate you coming in. It's a solid hire, in my opinion, and we retain Ulbrich. Yeah, we'll see, but who's the OC? Right now, it looks like could be Tommy Rees. Also have to think GM announced soon. Blank said he wanted them done around the same time. The 2 leading candidates, one of them's going to be available in about 12 minutes of game time. It's 41-6 Seahawks. He's a guy from the San Francisco 49ers. He's been linked with Stefanski and Kubiak to the Falcons, and the other one is Ian Cunningham for the Bears. Who do the Bears play tomorrow? They have to have the Rams. There's only 2 teams left. I think the Rams beat the Bears, then those 2 guys. And if that happens, GM could be done as quick as Monday or Tuesday of this week as well. So looking at it that way, and appreciate the super. I'm going to scroll down towards the bottom here because the chat has been so busy. I apologize. I'm not going to be able to, get to all y'all, but there are lots. there are lots. This is one of our most viewed podcasts already. So thank you. If you're on YouTube, I know we have, let's see, Abel came in and he was a member already. Let me see. I know I do member only videos at the very least. And Craig Hurst joined also. So I didn't see that one come through, but Craig, thank you. And then Devon, apologies. Devon McCartney also joined. So they're also new members as well. So thank you for that. You get that little Falcons logo in your chat on YouTube. And if you're watching this elsewhere, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you get your notifications when I do go live for something like this, because we'll throw in a gut reaction every now and then when things get a little crazy. Let me see here. Curtis talking about Andy Reid. He said Andy Reid had to leave Philly in order to have the success he's had. Bill failed in Cleveland as well before going to the Patriots. Andy was a very, very good head coach in Philly. His was almost like a Marty Schottenheimer thing, if you're old enough to remember that. Schottenheimer got fired. Y'all remember? He got fired after a 14-2 season. I think it was 14-2 season with the Chargers because they went one and done, and they couldn't get to the next level. That hasn't really worked out so well for the Chargers ever since. It's been a good move for both. The Eagles have won a couple Super Bowls. We know what Andy Reid has done, but Andy Reid's winning percentage in 14 years in Philadelphia was .583. I mean, he was good there. They really couldn't. The farthest they could go, they went to a Super Bowl in 2004. 10-6, 11-5, and in advance 11. That's Kansas City again. 10-5, 11-5, 10-6, 13-3, 12-4, 12-4, 11-5, 11-5. He was really, really good in Philly. It's been a good move for everybody, and I know Philly fans are really happy for Andy Reid too, that he's had that success. And some of it's been against each other also. Let's see here. Joe Andrews says, make it make sense. Okay. Joe, you got a 43-year-old two-time NFL Coach of the Year. The last time the Falcons had a Coach of the Year that they hired, it was Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves took him to a Super Bowl. He won Coach of the Year with the Falcons in 1998 after their 14-2 seasons. You've got a guy now that can design an offense and call his own plays, will replace the special teams coordinator, is likely going to keep one of the top defensive coordinators, at least in the conference. And I think it's a great hire. How it turns out, we will see. Those awards mean nothing. Well, what does mean something, Joe? What does mean something? Because the Browns have three. What did I say this earlier? The Browns have 3 double-digit win seasons in the last 30 years, and he's got 2 of them. He won in a place where it's almost impossible to win. That means something to me. So I think, and he got, again, because he had 2 11-win seasons in a place where it's almost impossible to win, he got Coach of the Year. So I think he did a good job there. And I think that becomes an immediate upgrade over what the Falcons have had. And the Falcons were close. Falcons were skin of their teeth close from winning 11 games. So that's what I think. Could be wrong. This all could blow up. And again, if you're betting on it blowing up. The Falcons have fired every coach they've had other than Bobby Petrino, and he quit. So it's it happens. Have the Browns ever had a fully talented roster? Yeah, I mean it's been since the 80s. They were really good there. They just, had 2 crazy losses to the Broncos. They got beat by the Raiders in one time, and they were an almost team in the 80s when Brian Sipe was their quarterback, and Bernie Kosar had some good years there. But since they were left high and dry by Art Modell for for Baltimore, and they came back. They gouged the Cleveland fans with PSLs, and they got super greedy. And it's been bad in Cleveland ever since they went and read that. Look at Mark joining up for the call to action. Thank you, Mark Karani. He became a YouTube member. Thank you so much. I certainly appreciate it. Alton says, let's hire McDaniel. Mike McDaniel is offensive coordinator. Alton, I think that may have happened if you were hiring a defensive coach. If I'm an offensive coach and I haven't previously worked with him, I don't know that I'd want to bring him in. It's just, I'm going to run my own offense. I'm going to have a protege of sorts. So I would expect McDaniel, if he doesn't end up getting another job, and I've said all along, I think he's a little too weird. He's going to need a little buffer for his weirdness, where he can be an offensive coordinator for a Robert Saleh type for a year or two before he gets back into it. Would be how I would look at it. That's where I would be. All right, let me see this. I had Mark came in as a member. Jet Jones is coming back in with another super. Says, what can we expect his offense to be? That's where I need Nick. Nick will start talking about schemes and this and that. It's been tough to figure out in the last couple of years because they've been so limited at quarterback. But let's see. Where did the Browns rank on offense the last few years? Let's see. Yeah, points 31 and 32. Before that, in 2023, when they had 11-6, they were 10th in points. In 2020, they were 14th in points, and they did that with a 21st ranked defense and a 13th ranked defense was when they had their 2-11 win seasons. They put up a bunch of yards, but they were their first in total yards in 2023. So, and who was their? They had multiple quarterbacks that year. They led the league in 2023 in yards with Joe Flacco starting 5 games, Deshaun Watson starting 6 games, PJ Walker starting 2 games, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting 3 games, and Jeff Driscoll starting a game. That's insane. Did I get that right? Points 4, 10th. They led the league in yards with 5 different quarterbacks starting games. Good God. Yards, defensive ranks. No, they had the number 1 defense. That makes more sense. Okay. Apologies. Yeah, they had the number 1 ranked defense. That helps. Yeah, that helps when you got Myles Garrett out there too. We'll get into this when we have Nick, Jet Jones. We'll break into a little bit more of what they want it to be. But, for me, offense comes down to, can I get the ball to my playmakers and set them up to make plays? How I do that, that's how I judge it. So we'll see on that. Michael Baxter says, I'm going to give this new head coach, the Falcons, a chance. I think everybody will. There's going to be people that preferred another direction, but once they put on the Falcons uniform, they're Falcons. I don't know if y'all remember when I talked about Kirk Cousins was coming off beating Tampa Bay and throwing for 500 yards. The Falcons were like 5-3, 6-3, something like that. He's flying high, and their defense had like 8 sacks. They just weren't doing anything. I'm like, well, here's a crazy idea. They'll never happen. But, trade Max Crosby. They need a quarterback. Trade Michael Penix for Max Crosby. Everybody lost their minds. No way do you make that trade. I'm like, well, you know what? You're right. No one would make that trade, Crosby for Penix, straight up. Penix hadn't done anything since he was drafted except put on a Falcons uniform. Nothing. Didn't even play in the preseason. Didn't do anything. And if on draft day you had offered the number 8 pick to the Raiders for Max Crosby so they could take J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, they would have laughed at you. No effing way. Forget it. But you put on that jersey, baby. You put on that helmet, and you start talking about how you love the city. And, oh, man, we love you. We're fans. We want to be told. We want you to tell me everything I want to hear, and by God, I'll defend every stupid thing you do until the day you're fired. So we're all going to give him a chance. Might say, hey, listen, this wasn't my first pick, and I think he's going to fail miserably, but I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. That kind of ends up being the thought process on this. All right. Imagine having a 1-15 season and getting worse the next year. Yeah, the Browns had Fast Freddie Kitchens as their quarterback, as their head coach. I remember not fat, he was actually Fat Freddie Kitchens, former Alabama guy. In 2015, the Browns were 3-13. In 16, they were 1-15. In 17, they were 0-16. So in 3 years, they won 4 games. They were 6-10 under Freddie Kitchens, showing big improvement. Or they were then they went 7 and they were 6-10. And then they went 11-5, 8-9, 7-10, 11-6. And then, the wheels fell off of that team. All right. Xavier says, are we keeping Ulbrich? It looks like it, Xavier. Hope you're doing well. That's a cool profile picture. I like it. Hope you're doing well. It looks like they're going to try. And Ulbrich talked about, I came back to this city because we love it. I came back to this franchise because Arthur Blank, and we love it. We want to be here. So money shouldn't be a problem. I said that before. People are like, oh, he was only paying Raheem X amount of money. Yeah, but I bet he's in the 10 plus million on this one. And, when you're willing to take a $35 million dead cap hit, which means I've already spent $35 million on a guy that's not even on my roster, then $15 million, $20 million for a coaching staff shouldn't be anything. Shouldn't be any type of problem. So Ulbrich, it shouldn't come down to money. And, it's and the reports are that Stefanski wants to keep Ulbrich here, and Ulbrich sure acted like he wanted to be here. And why wouldn't you? I mean, if I'm talking to my GM, hey, what are you going to do to help me out here? This franchise has been crap on defense forever, since the 70s. I could use a cornerback, a linebacker, and a defensive tackle. That'd be nice. Real Capone says, Scott, you have an excuse for everything pertaining to Stefanski, don't you? Oh, I just like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I don't know if y'all know this. For those of you, there's 1,000 people watching right now. Y'all, I was born in Cleveland. So I'm speaking on this, with some knowledge of that franchise, y'all. And the ability to win in there is not easy to win it in Cleveland. I was born in Cleveland and moved down here. I was moved down here by, half the rest of the Midwest that moved down to the South in the 70s and early 80s. So I've been born in Cleveland, raised in Metro Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm a Georgia boy, but I've got a little knowledge to what the Cleveland Browns are like historically. As far as that, other excuses, I'm not sure what other excuses I'm making on that. What excuses? I like the hire. Do I think that his failings the last 2 years have more to do with the Browns as an organization as opposed to being an indictment on him as a coach? Yes, I do. Now we'll find out. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. Halsey, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. One of the OGs is in with us every podcast. Falcons trading for Dylan Gabriel. Help is on the way. When I was at the Senior Bowl, I wouldn't have drafted Dylan Gabriel, let alone in the 3rd round. I watched him in the Senior Bowl. He's tiny, let alone in the 3rd round. I wouldn't have even drafted him on that one. Richard Pierce, I'd like to see Atlanta keep Ellis. He's a badass. He is. My goodness. Although I produced the Mile High Huddle podcast, and they got the news 50 minutes into their post-game podcast that Bo Nix is out for the year and breaks his ankle. You want to talk about flying high and then crashing down? But I've talked about, one of they're missing that piece. They're missing a difference maker, a linebacker, and my God, would he be a good fit in their defense? The Falcons need another linebacker. Let's say Ellis is back. They still need another linebacker. They need someone that's better than Bertrand as a number 3. So I don't want to have to go into this offseason needing 2 linebackers on that one. Michael Baxter, he says, We just need a solid quarterback who knows how to play. Again, Michael, I'm with you on this. Why did game manager become such a negative? Is it one of those things where you're afraid to say the negative, so you kind of say the anti-positive? Like, oh, he's not small. I just like to see him get bigger. He's not slow. He just needs to be faster. He's not soft. I just like to see him tackle a little harder. He doesn't have, he doesn't have a rocket arm, but he's a great game manager. Is it by damning with faint praise? Is that what it is? Because the best quarterbacks are all game managers. They all know how to manage a game. They know down and distance. They know time on the clock. They know defenses in front of them. All of that stuff you can't really scout until you see them out there on the field. That's what you need. And some of that comes with experience. Some guys have it, get it. Some guys never get that way. So, Byron, hit on this, but hell, we're an hour into this. I'm going to get going here pretty soon. Says, does hiring Stefanski mean we're keep Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins' contract expires on March 13th. He'll be cut, or they will tear his contract up and sign him to a new one by then. That is a guarantee. Something has to happen with Kirk Cousins by March 13th, because if it doesn't, he gets another $70 million guaranteed. I promise you, he's not getting another $70 million guaranteed. So in order to do what he did, he says, okay, you need to put in something in here that's going to prove that you're going to release me, that I will be able to get out of this. And what he did was free up the money that would have been available after free agency started. That money was available before free agency started. So now the Falcons can negotiate contracts with Caden Ellis. They didn't really have the money to do that until Kirk Cousins moved some of his money past March 13th. He's still going to get paid the same amount of money. He didn't save it any money. It's just a procedural thing. That said, he's gone. As soon as he's gone, $35 million hits the Falcons' books. It will likely be $22 million in 2026 and $12.5 million in 2027. Then he's a free agent. The Falcons could re-sign him. It is possible. So the Falcons could re-sign him. It would seem really weird, but there's a history there and a fresh start. The Falcons could re-sign him, give him $12 million, bridge money guarantee, $12, $15 million come in. You're 38 years old, maybe. But they will let him go before he is back, even if it's the same day. Oh, the Falcons have announced that they tore up his contract and signed him to a one-year deal. When that happens, $35 million goes on the Falcons' books, and then plus whatever the new quarterback contract is, whether it's Kirk Cousins or somebody else. Yeah, and Riel says, I live in Youngstown, Ohio, not far from Cleveland, and the Browns are my second team. Stefanski has bad decision-making, but I hope it goes right, of course. Yeah, and no, it wasn't perfect. I know there are some things we saw, reading through X and what people are listening. It's like, he did this, this, and this. Like, dude, it's almost like he's trying to get fired. Some of this stuff, and again, when it goes bad, you don't always do things right. So, and does it go bad because of you? Maybe. Do I think he is an improvement over what the Falcons had last year? I do on that one. Ozark, good to see you. He says, is Jarrett Stidham considered a top tier backup? Yeah, he's considered pretty good. He was targeted by Sean Payton. He hasn't hardly played much, but he's made a bunch of money being a backup. Reggie, good to see you. He says, I'd like to give Stefanski the benefit of the doubt, but how is he faultless for the crap show that was the Browns QB decisions last season? Well, what were his choices? Joe Flacco, a third-round rookie, and a fifth-round rookie? Man, there's no good choices there. That's the problem, Reggie. And I feel like, some of the hype that surrounded Shedeur Sanders, take the name out of it. And his choices were a 72-year-old Joe Flacco, a 5'7" Dylan Gabriel, and a fifth, third-round pick and a fifth-round pick. Take the names away from it, and you ask yourself, what? What was he supposed to do? Where is he supposed to, develop this guy? That's the way I think of it, Reggie. Take the names out of the picture because the names are going to bias how we see things. The Shedeur Sanders thing, he automatically, you have there's people that have a thought of him as soon as they hear his name. Oh, he's crap. Oh, he's amazing. Well, he was a 5th round pick, and that's who he ended up being. If you believe that happened for reasons outside of ability, fine. I'm here to tell you that that NFL general managers would draft Charles Manson if they thought he'd be the next Patrick Mahomes. So at best, if it knocks him down a round or two, he wasn't a 1st round guy. So, but forget it. What he had was Flacco, a 3rd round pick and a 5th round pick last year. That's who he had. Why did he have that? Well, because they gave away a bunch of money and picks for Deshaun Watson. And they had the number 5 overall pick, and the next pick that went in the 1st round, I think, was 25. Maybe they should have traded down and targeted Jackson Dart or Tyler Shuck. I don't know. But the Browns quarterback, no one was doing anything with the Browns quarterbacks last year. Just Bill Walsh in his prime. Kyle Shanahan is having trouble with the Browns quarterbacks last year. It's just the way I see it. Brock Purdy was a 7th round pick. Yeah, he's an exception. He's an exception to the rule. If you try and build a team with the exception of the rule, you're going to lose a lot on that one. So that's what I think. And Dirty Birdstar, thanks for being a member. Scott out here doing Flacco all wrong, 72 years old. Yeah, he can't be older than 50. No, I mean, he's 72 in football years, but Flacco played pretty good for the Colts when he was there. On that one. All right. I think that's just about going to do it for me. If you make sure you hit the like and subscribe on your way out, I want to say thank you so much to all of y'all for joining me at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. And I know there's a lot more mobile people in here because we went on mobile and y'all are probably out. You're like, hey, we got news. But Trenton came in with a super. D Free. Abel, thanks for being a new member. Curtis, Jet Jones, Walter Beach, Maurice coming in red hot. Second short Falcons report coming in a couple times. DNV TV. Curtis Case, Rusty, thanks for being members, y'all. Corey Carter, Master Roshi, L Madness, Mark Karani is also a new member. Michael Baxter. How did I miss you? I missed you about 10 minutes ago. Did I miss I missed Carrie. Sorry, Carrie. Says, hi, Scott. I'm late, but happy with this hire. Well, I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad I was going back through these because somehow I missed your super chat. So Carrie's an awesome follow on X. If you had one that hit about 500,000 the other day, that's nice. And great Falcons fan, and I always say that being a Falcons fan is a green flag because you got low expectations and you're loyal. those are Falcons fans. So thanks for being here. I'm glad you're happy with this hire. I am too. Again, going way back, Kubiak was my guy. And a 2-time coach of the year who ran an offensive coach wasn't available. So I'm not sure. I would have been if I wanted Stefanski. Once Harbaugh was gone, even with Harbaugh was there, I still wanted offense. I was going to be pleased with Stefanski or Kubiak. And then if it was Robert Saleh was my third choice, as long as he got Mike McDaniel as his offensive coordinator. And after that, I was going to be kind of disappointed. So I was happy with Kubiak or Stefanski either way. Saleh, I would have been okay with. I think he's got a chance to get some things right. Again, going back to do I blame Robert Saleh for failing with the New York Jets? No. The Jets have been a failure. I think some of the organization can end up rubbing off on the individual. I think Robert Saleh is a pretty good coach, and I think his second time around, he's going to be a pretty good coach. But, again, if you have previous coaching experience, you've been fired. And how many was it this year? Was it 9 or even it was 9. I don't think it had 10. You're 9 coaches, that's more than a quarter of the league change coaches this year. It happens a lot. So I'm glad you're happy with it, Carrie. I hope you have a good night. I am going to, let's see, what's this say? Shonif says, just heard that Kirk wants Kevin Stefanski in order to stay in Atlanta. Me have influence to hire. No way. Absolutely no way. Shonuf, that's what it is. It's Shonuf. Shonuf, no. Just no. If there was any influence at all, it was as, hey, Kirk, you're in the building. You're a professional. We paid you $100 million. What was your experience? You'd be stupid not to ask him at least. Hey, what was your experience working with him, Kirk? How'd you like it? That would be the only influence he would have as a point of reference. It has nothing to do with his ability as a player. It has nothing to do with his contract. So that would be the influence. So if someone told you that, tell them no. All right. Burmy says, sorry, I'm not sold. This will not end well. It usually doesn't. It usually doesn't end well. But we've got the hope of some change and a lot of change now. It usually doesn't. Falcons have fired every coach they've ever hired, except for the one that quit. It usually doesn't. Very few coaches get to leave on their terms. That's the nature of the beast. But there's a lot to like about what the Atlanta Falcons are doing this offseason. There is. I'm looking forward to free agency. I'm looking forward to the draft. And we'll see how it goes from there. And sure enough, Kirk Cousins isn't hiring the Falcons coaches. No way, no how. His contract is up on March 13th. He may or may not be back on a new contract, but he is not. His influence would be Matt Ryan calling up Kirk Cousins and say, hey, what do you think about working with Stefanski? He'd be stupid not to talk to him about that. That's it. So on that note, I'm going to get out of here. It's going on 11:30. We may be back tomorrow. So make sure you have those notifications on. Keep it at falconssi.com for all the latest news. Appreciate y'all being here. Had a hell of a night. Good night, everybody. It's a new era at Flowery Branch in the Atlanta Falcons.